Hello and welcome to this evening's Parenting in Lockdown session. I'm Will van der Hart, and I hope very much that you have been able to get into our Zoom call tonight, or whether you're on the YouTube. It's great to have you with us.
Hello and welcome to this evening's Parenting in
Make sure that that doesn't come through. It's so good to have you here, and thank you so much. We're going to have a really good evening together, I hope. A great opportunity for us to chat about this really difficult topic. And if you're in the room tonight, just recognize that many of us here are stressed and struggling with the challenges of parenting in lockdown 3, particularly. And this isn't meant to be a sort of told you so event where you feel bad about your parenting and walk away feeling disheartened, but actually hopefully there's some solidarity in the room from the team here. So if you're part of St. Dionis Church, or if you're joining us from one of the other churches in London, then it's great to have you here with us. But we are definitely amongst friends tonight, so feel relaxed. You might want to grab yourself a drink, soft or stronger, depending on how your day has been. And we would love to just have a great hour together on this call. I'm going to ask you, if you are joining the Zoom tonight, if you wouldn't mind just, if you open your video, that's absolutely fine. If you wouldn't mind just hitting your mute button, then we won't have lots of people's children in the background asking me if they've learned anything yet, which could be embarrassing. But what we're going to do is hopefully share some conversation. Just to let you know, if you're on the Zoom, if you do jump in the Q&A a bit later on tonight, you will pop up on the recording, which is going out to YouTube. So just anyone who wouldn't want to be recorded, just to let you know, to put a question in the chat rather than to put a question out live with audio. Otherwise, you will come up onto the screen. I've got a few thoughts to start with, and I guess the first thing to do is invite you all to just take a deep breath and congratulate yourself that you've actually got to this point in the evening. You've managed to get your computer open, and you've managed to sit down. So massive congratulations. That is the first part of parenting in lockdown. I think the most important is finding some sort of balance and coming to the end of an evening, normally around 8:30, and actually having some time to yourself. That is a sign of success. If you can hear children running around in the background still, don't be disheartened. Just be diligent about staying with your computer right now. This time is time for you. I'm thinking about the 4 corners of parenting in lockdown, particularly in this sort of lockdown 3. I think we learned quite a lot in lockdown 1 with regard to how we would take care of ourselves, and it was a significant challenge. Lockdown 3 is a double down on the same sort of extension. And I think we probably all can realize that we found lockdown 1 extremely hard and hoped we would never have to be homeschoolers ever again. Our respect for teachers went through the room, and through the roof, I should say. And we're now in a situation where we cannot believe that we've had to end up back in that situation for a second time. And for those of you who weren't quarantining at various times during the past term, who might have been in the room 3 times or more. So being back here is a difficult thing. And whilst we've learned a lot, nothing really can take away the level of exhaustion and overextension we feel right now. Something I think here about the issues around feeling like you've done a massive gym session and then leaving the gym, but then being told to go back in again and have another go for another 40 minutes. And just feeling like I've spent all the resources I've got. So I want you to think about a 4-corner approach tonight to your parenting in lockdown. And the 4-corner approach is that you would look at 4 C's. And these are going to underpin the conversation I'm going to have with Kate in a few moments. And the 4 C's are, the first one is compassion. So everything we want to say tonight is going to be framed within the context of compassion. And that's not just compassion to your children, which might be running thin at the moment, but it's actually compassion towards yourself. So it's a little bit of self-compassion. We're going to talk a little bit about that, making sure that you're actively compassionate towards yourself as well as towards your kids. You can't give away what you haven't received yourself. So being compassionate at this time towards yourself is really, really important. really want to encourage you to think about that. The second thing I want you to think about specifically is the idea of collaboration. You can't do this parenting stuff on your own, and lockdown tends to make us feel more isolated than we really are. And I mean that wholeheartedly, that actually we are less isolated than we believe. And we're going to be talking about collaborating tonight. And part of this is an exercise in collaboration. Thirdly, it's compromise. And those of you who sent your children to bed with a couple of chocolate bars know exactly what I'm talking about when I say compromise. But I want you to, as parents, to think more about compromise during this session than maybe you feel comfortable doing. We're going to talk a bit about that later. But rigidity is definitely unhelpful in this particular context. And then finally, it's confidence. It's actually, for many of us, regaining a little bit of our confidence in parenting and recognizing that we're doing a better job than we think. So the 4 C's, the 4 corners of lockdown parenting are compassion, collaboration, compromise, and confidence. And in all of these things, I want to kind of encourage you to recognize both what you've already got, what you're already achieving, and also where a few little tweaks could assist you, if you like, on the journey of parenting in lockdown 3. If we haven't met before, I just introduced myself again. I'm Will van der Hart. I'm the Associate Vicar at St Dionis Church in Parsons Green in West London. I'm a co-founder of the Mind and Soul Foundation, which is a think tank exploring Christian spirituality and mental and emotional health issues. I am previously a primary school teacher, which I hope will help in my ability to share a few thoughts with you around the kind of teaching components of this session. And I'm really passionate about parenting and families. And I've done a lot of work in this field over the years. And I'm delighted tonight that one of my co-directors of the Mind and Soul Foundation, Dr. Kate Middleton, is on the call. So Kate, I'm wondering if I can get you to unmute. And
I am unmuted.
It'd be great to hear from you. Kate, welcome.
Hi, Will. It's really good to be with you guys.
I can hear myself. Right, this is going to be challenging. Hold on a sec. Can you hear me?
I can hear you too, but I can hear you twice. I know what you mean. It's not just
great.
you.
Now, what I need to do here is, Kate, if I'm just going to mute. So you introduce yourself, Kate, and then I'll just sort out that particular piece of tech right now.
Okay, you have a play with the tech. Good evening, everybody. It's so good to be with you, gathered across London. My name's Kate. I am not married to Prince William, but I do work with Will in his other world at Mind and Soul Foundation. And I'm a psychologist by background.
Can you get me some
living and
quickly?
Working at the moment in and from Hertfordshire. So I'm in Hitchin, so just up the road from you guys outside London.
Okay.
And I have 2 kids, just to let you know. So my son is 8 years old and I have a daughter who is 15. But also one of my great passions is working with teenagers. And also I have done some previous work with younger children as a psychologist as well. So I get to be mum. I also get to be a psychologist. I like the latter more because I get to be right a lot more often. That would be my observation. And apparently now I'm a teacher too, Will, which was news to me and quite shocking. And headmistress, cook, a cleaner. I'm literally gathering titles, almost by the day as we go into lockdown 3. I don't know about you.
Brilliant. Kate, it's so good to have you here. And thank you so much. You'll notice that my parenting fail has just begun. Hopefully you can only hear one of me now. Am I right? Perfect. You'll also notice I'm now wearing very attractive Paw Patrol headphones.
I was going to say, they do belong to one of your children, I'm guessing.
I've stolen these from one of my children, but just to make this really authentic, I think wearing Paw Patrol headphones throughout this session is going to make me a real picture of what it looks like to compromise and collaborate in the middle of this session. Kate, let's get straight into it in terms of the support we're trying to offer people on this particular call. And I want to ask you a few questions, but potentially the first thing I'd like to ask you just to lay out a little bit of the land of what it looks like to be under pressure emotionally, both for children and for parents right now? What are you seeing as someone who's really been working in this field from sort of psychology perspective?
Yeah, oh my goodness. And parents, just massive empathy fist bumps to you all. This is such a challenging season if you are parenting, and particularly if you're trying to juggle a lot of work pressure or supporting other people as well, or just if your circumstances are difficult, if you've maybe lost a job, you're facing financial pressure, supporting other people, shielding. There are just so many things going on right now. Almost everybody has just got this much on their plate. And I think for us as parents, that's the challenge, isn't it? You know, we are doing parenting, but we're doing a million other thins, and our stress levels are right up here. And there's this zone on your sort of stress scale called which I talk about as in terms of the overwhelm zone. And when we're just overwhelmed, we're pushed right into the red. It's like, you think of your stress scale on a 0 to 10, it's the sort of 8 to 10 zone at the end. Your mind literally cannot function in its normal, efficient way anymore. Your ability to think clearly goes. Emotions like frustration and anxiety and feelings of panic start to bubble up to the surface. It's so hard to keep your cool. And I certainly would say that I have been living on the edge of overwhelm now for about 10, 11 months. I cannot tell you in the last week to 10 days just how many times I have lost it in the moment because I've just been pushed into that zone. And I so want to be a better person in those moments. But it's just biology. You are pushed into the overwhelm zone. Everything in your brain, it's like an emergency setting. So it's trying to tell you to get out, change something, get back in control. It's like all the emergency sirens in your mind going off. And yet the trigger is your poor 8-year-old who's just come in for the 600 millionth time. Mom, I have a question. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that just today. And it's so hard. It's not their fault. So for us as parents, we are stressed out, we are overwhelmed, and we're trying desperately to stay the right side of our emotions and stay in control. For the kids, they are living with us, and it's actually not their fault. This is just a really difficult situation. But younger kids, and really right up into adolescence, the beginning of the teenage years, their ability to understand that things aren't about them is really limited. Their baseline is to assume everything is about them because that's how they see the world. Everything revolves around them. And so in tough times like this, it's really hard for them to say, Mum is yelling because she's got a Zoom call that starts in 3 minutes and I've just asked her about my maths homework again when she thought I was settled for the next hour. What they see is I'm a bad person and Mum doesn't like me. And then they cry, and that makes you even later for your Zoom call. And it's just all very, very difficult from both sides.
I can see a lot of nodding heads there, Kate, in the background.
That was
a lot
just
of people,
today.
You know, that's just today, exactly. We can kind of see a lot of people just saying, yeah, absolutely, that's my situation. Now, one of the things that seems to really cause a lot of problems in lockdown specifically is comparative culture. So it's the comparison culture. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I've got a technological problem. What's going on?
Or maybe I'm just streaming behind.
She's streaming behind. We're a world of technological disasters here tonight. Okay, I'm just thinking for a minute in terms of the dangers of comparison culture. Because we, as parents, one of the real challenges of lockdown has been this sort of flow of comparisons to other parents, a sense of not being good enough ourselves, almost assuming that we can be professional teachers and also homemakers, potentially also people who are employed, are trying to do their work at home. You know, how difficult, how damaging is the kind of comparison culture for us as we're trying to parent in lockdown? And where do you think that, you know, what can we do to mitigate the impact of comparison culture?
Yeah, I mean, we're all very prone to that, aren't we? And the great thing about this season and the 21st century is that we're all in touch with everybody. So again, I don't know about all you parents, but I have a parents WhatsApp group. There is the parents Facebook group for school. We are on Google Classroom. So everybody is chatting everywhere. The teacher is sending me messages. It's all out there, which is great. But that does mean that you compare yourself, and I would say you compare your children. It's really hard not to look at what your child is doing and then look at other kids in the same class or year group and think, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with my kid? Am I just a total failure? But kids are really different, and they develop and change at different ages, and they interact in different ways. And so it's difficult. And I guess there's a bias, isn't there, Will? Because inevitably the kids you are seeing and hearing the most from, and the families, are the ones with the kids who happen to be the most engaged, the most articulate, the most academic. A lot of kids in primary years just aren't in that academic space. My son would do anything but schoolwork. I cannot tell you how disinterested in schoolwork I'm discovering this right now. He's a bright kid, but he's just not interested. There are kids in his class who clearly are loving it. My daughter was like that. She would have been through her list of work. Gosh, I was about to say, I wish it was her I did lockdown with. I don't wish to do lockdown with any of my children. But kids are just very, very different. And it's so hard. And again, when you're in that overwhelmed space, you don't think clearly, do you? And so when you're already feeling low and vulnerable and you're knackered and you feel like, I don't know if you've had moments like this today, Will. I just stopped and for a moment and I thought, I don't think I've ever failed at so many things simultaneously in my entire life. It's quite an achievement. I could have listed them. I missed an Ocado order. My mother was cross with me. My children were cross with me. My husband was disappointed. I was late for it. It's just like this. It's actually quite an achievement.
So if we get into that first corner then of the compassion in the four corners of lockdown parenting, practicing that self-compassion towards yourself, letting yourself off the hook of expectation is really, really important. Remember seeing a photograph, I think, from a parent in our school, in our children's primary school, of their three children lined up in their school uniforms, all like looking extremely studious. I'm thinking, this sort of a bomb's gone off in my house, what happened here? And I got a feeling they probably set that photograph up. There were probably massive bribes, I tell myself, on the table, huge chocolate bars, in order to get them to sit like that with their school uniforms on. But it is important, isn't it, that we practice a level of self-compassion here. And the expectation is often that we are going to be able to replicate a teacher's ability. It's totally unrealistic, isn't it? Because if we were asked to replicate a doctor's ability, as a lockdown practice, we would never believe that we could do that. If we thought we could replicate a solicitor's activity, we would never think without training I could do that. But weirdly, when it comes to teaching, parents think, oh, I should be able to do that. Now, I trained for 4 years to be a teacher, and I found it incredibly difficult. And I didn't actually even stay in the profession. So I've got every sympathy with teachers, but I also want to sympathize with parents and say to parents tonight, be compassionate enough towards yourself to recognize that you are not a teacher, unless you are actually a qualified teacher. You are not a teacher, and you shouldn't assume that you can fulfill the profession of teaching for your children to the same degree that your teacher will be able to. So that's a key part of that initial compassion and expectation.
And even if you are, Will, I have friends who are teachers who are now also homeschooling, and they say to me, well, I ran a group in the first lockdown, which was for people homeschooling, and my teacher friends there said, it is so different doing this with your own children, because they do answer back and they're cross with you. And that's a beautiful thing. It's because they feel safe and secure with you. So they express their emotions much more. And in school, they don't do that. They have to be polite, or they get sent to the head. I have no headmistress to send my son to, although it's quite tempting to try sometimes. And I don't know, again, about you, but this time I have noticed and had to really intentionally remember that my son is also distressed. He is also disappointed. He is also depressed and fed up. And the way that is playing itself out quite often is just sulky, moody, whiny, that wonderful tweenager thing. Now, I've seen him on calls with his teacher, and he's not like that with her, because he knows he has to make an effort. But with me, it all comes out, and it should come out. The difficulty is that we're trying to teach as well. So I love what you say about expectation, just trying to recognize what we're going to achieve. And at the end of the day, what is the most important thing? Is it that you've finished all the work down to the absolute final sentence? Or are there some other goals, some other wins in this? which is hard. I'm a bit of an overachiever. I'm used to achieving in most things I do, and it's quite hard not applying that to my son's schooling. But that actually isn't the aim here.
That's a really key point, isn't it? The overachievement bit, because actually we are not very good at compromise. I think the second of my corners, the first one is compassion, that moves us, on really to compromise. Well, that's actually the third one I mentioned, but of the four corners. So because we aren't great at compromising, but compromising is really important in a season like this, isn't it? Because the expectation we have is I should be able to run a full-time job, be a full-time teacher, be a homemaker, deal with the worst pandemic for 100 years, deal with my own anxiety around my health and well-being and the health and well-being of my children, be a technological genius who managed to fix Zoom and WhatsApp and Facebook and everything else, and complicated things like Google Classrooms, as well as looking serene and peaceful and somehow, keeping everyone from raiding the sweetie jar too regularly. So there has to be some compromises. What do you think about compromise from a psychological perspective, and how can we do compromise well in lockdown?
Yeah, I think compromise and expectation that we've just been talking about is one way that we can help ourselves, but also, and it's one of your other C's, collaboration, actually talking to our children about that. So particularly going into this season, thinking, let's think about what we can realistically achieve. What's that going to look like? And are there some things that we might have to let go? Can we look at how we do the rhythm of schoolwork or whatever it is, and think about what we're aiming at here? And it is sometimes, I think, as parents, our expectations of what our children should be able to do, we're talking a lot about schoolwork, but that's, let's face it, that is something that most of us are wrestling with. They're far too high. Again, my primary school teacher friends, it's been really interesting. They sort of talked to me about how in an hour and a half lesson, that would be broken up into many little chunks. And the amount of time the children would actually be just sitting, focusing on work at any one time for most schools would be quite short. Whereas as parents, we sort of see an hour's work, we think, right, let's sit down and we'll do this math sheet in one nice focused hour of concentration. And actually a lot of, well, certainly my 8-year-old, that's not something who knows if he's capable of it. He's certainly not doing it. And so our expectation there, and trying to think and trying to collaborate with our children to say, here's the deal. How about if we do this? And then what that means is you can do that, and we'll work till this time, and then you can have free time, or
So we're going to build into this idea of kind of compromise. I guess before that, we have to talk a little bit about routine, which is something that we all struggle with. Routine, I mean, some people like routine. Some people are straight out there with a kind of, a big grid on the wall with every day mapped out. Yeah, other people not so much. But routine is helpful, particularly for children, isn't it? And how do we manage routine in lockdown 3? Why is it important, and what should we do about it?
Yeah, and so routine, there's 2 reasons that routine is important, but let's be really clear right at the start. We're talking routine, not another thing to achieve. So these super achievement perfectionist parents, the temptation is to draw out your perfect timetable, tick things off. It's amazing, it's color coordinated, every second of the day is accounted for. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is routine. I like to think of it as like trying to walk across a stream or a river. It's like stepping stones across a river. Do you know where your next stepping stone is, and is that vaguely predictable? And your brain uses routine like that to keep your stress level low, because you don't have to think then. If you know what the basic building blocks of your day and week are, it's surprising how much of life you can do without really thinking. I mean, in the olden days where we went places, you would get and you'd drive your kids to school and not even really think about the journey, because that's routine. And stress isn't just when we're distressed. Stress is anything that requires work of your mind. So the more we can get into some building block type routine, like basic stuff, it will drop some of our stress level. And for your kids, it's about expectations. So they know where the next stepping stone is. They know when they'll get a break, when they'll get a biscuit. That's quite key in my house, I find, the biscuit stepping stone. Like, when will I next get food? And what that means is it's only slightly, because I just don't think you can eradicate it completely, but it does slightly stop the constant questioning. Mum, I'm hungry. Mum, when's this? Mum, what's that? Mum, can I do this? The more you can build those things into routine. And so it does help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our view would be that actually, obviously, nutrition is really important to children's focus in education. If you don't feed your children periodically and appropriately, they're not going to concentrate. So trying to build your day around your meals is really significant. I would say try really hard not to let meals be infected by work. And meals should be an actual switch off. They should be a switch off from screens, and they should be a switch off from lessons. So try and make your meals a bit more.
Oh, I've lost Will. Has everybody else lost Will? Oh, we lost you for a moment, Will, but I think you, oh yeah, are you back? Are you not back? He's in real flow of saying something very wise there. Oh, I think Will's
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Well done.
I'm back. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. Sorry, everyone. I disappeared again. Technological disasters. I was saying about meal times, just trying to make sure that you are present with your children during at least one of the meals of the day, preferably lunch or dinner. And in terms of the corners of the day, try and think about breakfast, snack time, lunchtime, and dinner time as the 4 meal corners for children. And they tend to work well in that kind of a routine. And then if you think about the morning as being your focused output time work-wise, I always say to parents in lockdown, any activity that you get done for primary years in the afternoon is a bonus. So for all parents on this call, I would say, if you get work done in the morning and you get some achievable work, up to 3 hours of good work, as in I'm on task, you've done really well. Anything more than that in the afternoon is an absolute bonus. And I would say with children, it's helpful if primary years children focus on something that's more fun and more uplifting after the lunchtime, then actually the afternoons become something to look forward to rather than something that they're dreading. And so there's a few ideas there around keeping a routine. Obviously, if you haven't got a routine, you can't compromise. Because actually everything looks like a compromise to the child. So try and think about some rigidity and then incorporating some flexibility in that rigidity. But as Kate said, the worst thing you can do is a kind of litigious schedule every half an hour throughout the day from 9 till 4. It's a rod for your own back, and actually it will create some real discordance in the family, especially after a week or two. Kate, how do we manage screen time?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Surely this is an absolute nightmare.
This is such a challenge, isn't it? And it's always been a challenge. It has always been a challenge. So I have an 8-year-old son. He adores gaming. He is apparently super clever at it. The other day, he hacked into the HTML of his school home learning website and changed all of the stuff that his teacher had sent. So it said things like the children absolutely shouldn't work, and it's very important that they don't do their school. I was absolutely horrified until he showed me that it wasn't. That was just what we were seeing, not what everyone was seeing. So it turns out, I mean, who knew? The kid does know something, but. So it's always been a battle, and I think what we've seen in this season, and as just to offer a very brief tangent, I think one thing we've got to remember for our kids is this is more than just a weird season. This is, I'm going to use a very annoying phrase, it is a new normal for them, in that kids adapt and they don't know life like we have. They haven't lived like 30, 40 years like we have. If your kid's 6, 7, 8, this is like, a significant chunk of their life. And my son certainly has adapted and just assumes this is now normal life. So this is not an era for him. Just the world has changed, and he is adapting and changing and growing with it, because this is it's just his reality. He said to me the other day, remember those days, Mummy, when we used to go to church? God, it's so gutting. You have those moments as a parent where you're just like, oh man. But so in this season, one of the things we've seen is the online world has become more real than the real world. So that's made it even harder. And probably not if you've got much younger primary kids, but certainly once they're into the space where they're gaming, chatting online, as he said to me the other day, this is the only space I get to hang out with my mates. And younger kids, early adolescence, that sense of being part of a tribe, a big bunch of mates who hang out together is really important, and they cannot do that in real life when they're not in school. So it's made it an even more powerful space to be in. I think it's also just really anxiety provoking for us as parents, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my experience with my daughter, who is 12, is that actually she's doing homeschool online all day.
Yeah.
And then she wants her phone to talk to friends in the breaks. And we had quite an interesting conversation just this week where, you know, me and my wife were trying to navigate about maybe taking the phone away because we didn't want her to have so much screen time during the day. She really got upset about that, which I understand. And her upset was, but actually, this is how I'm spending time with my friends. And we had a really interesting conversation. We talked, I think the third corner, I talked about collaboration. We really had to collaborate with her on that and say, well, look, we're upset, we're concerned about how much screen time you're having. We came to the conclusion that we were more concerned about her mental health if she was isolated from her friends.
Yeah.
But the compromise would be that actually every break wouldn't be spent on the screen or on calls, and that there would be a lunchtime downstairs and that she'd have some outside time during the day. And I think, you know, I'd say to everyone on this call on YouTube as well, having these, even with younger children, these adult conversations, we previously termed them adult conversations, but these collaborative conversations with our children at every stage of lockdown is really helpful. And there was a time when you could say, well, children really shouldn't be invested in these kind of conversations, or it's an adult's responsibility to make these decisions. Now, I'd say we require a lot more collaboration with our children to help onboard them to making some of these sensible decisions for themselves, or at least so they understand the rhetoric behind the decision. I would definitely advise against a kind of parachute in model where, you know, you determine everything and basically tell them, well, that's just what dad or that's just what mum says. It's really important to have that collaboration and get their buy-in around issues like the screen. Where just from a psychological perspective, Kate, where might there be red flags where the screen is concerned in terms of the amount of time, or what should we look out for, particularly where sleep is concerned? Because I know a lot of parents and children are struggling to sleep well with the amount of anxiety they're having, and they might reach for the screen late at night. How does that impact their sleep?
Yeah. So in terms of things that we might be more concerned about, it's good encouragement to know there has been some research coming out of lockdown looking at the impact on children of being online so much more and on screens. And actually the resounding conclusion of most of those little bits of research is that if they are using those spaces to connect with friends, it's actually potentially even quite a positive space at the moment when that is the only way they can do it. So I think there's a big difference between when your kids are using it as a space to be sociable, to build relationship, to interact. And I mean, I would reflect that. I've seen my son's social skills go up. You know, at the beginning of the first lockdown, we put him and a bunch of his mates on a Zoom call, and he literally looked at me. He's like, "What now?" And I'm like, "We'll talk to one another." And he's like, "What?" And like they had no idea how to do that, because until then their whole way of playing was kicking a ball around. I don't think they ever actually had conversations. Now you hear them yakking away. It's amazing. So there are good things. And I think I heard a conversation with a psychologist about exactly this issue the other day that was saying, imagine that your child was obsessed with playing the piano and was doing that 10 to 12 hours a day on their own. Why do we assume that gaming is worse? Actually, it's a lot of the same skills in terms of attention and motor skills and things. So now, obviously, they then went on to say there are reasons to be concerned, but I think we need to manage our own anxiety a bit. So there's a big difference between them doing it to connect and doing it in isolation. So that's one conversation I've had with my son. I'm much more concerned if he's spending hours and hours on his own or playing with not real people than if he's having a laugh with his mates. The second thing is the kind of mindlessness of it. So when children can become very binary, it's the only thing that they do. And what they lose then is creativity, exercise, all of the things that make life much more fun. Now, of course, those things are harder to find right now. So we have to help them be creative and get out and do them. But trying to get away, and we had to proactively implement a new system with my son, because we realized he was starting to come downstairs, automatically switch on the computer, and without even thinking, just log on to whatever he was playing. And then the minute he stopped schoolwork, that was just, he didn't even think about it. So that's sort of mindlessness. And then, yes, if it's interfering with some of the really important other aspects of life, so eating, sleeping, going to the toilet. I mean, let me say that's just to encourage any parents who've had just horrific moments with their children, who have got so absorbed in a game that they've not got to the loo in time. That's more common than you might think. Hopefully it's a wake-up call for your child as well, that they need to think about how absorbed they're getting in these games. These are good triggers for a conversation, shall we say. But so we're looking for that sort of thing. And yes, I think issues around sleep, if your child is struggling to sleep, struggling to switch off, making sure that sleep routine is something I would always talk about in parenting, and training your kids in that. If you can teach your kid how to sleep well, that is such a good life lesson, such a good gift you can give them. But so stopping gaming a decent time before bed, getting into a good sleep routine, whether it's bath, reading. I still read to my 8-year-old. We are currently on the penultimate famous 5 book, because that's how long lockdown has been.
That's quite old school, Kate. I do the same, but I'll share a few of my favourite titles with you.
He loves them, and we're also having to eat like ox tongue and tinned pineapple for our meals right now, because he's so
very good value anyway.
So yeah, just making sure once it starts to eat into some of those things, they would be signs to be more concerned.
I've lost you. Great, okay, that's so helpful. Just thinking now a little bit about conflict in the house, because a lot of people find that their tempers brew, they're struggling really with their temper themselves and just general irritation. How do we manage conflict in lockdown as a family? Because it seems that a lot of folk are struggling with just generally getting super irritated with their kids. And then, obviously there's lots of risks there, but most people feel that sort of a low level of irritation with their children because they've been overexposed. They're struggling. Low? Yeah. I mean, what do we do with conflict? How do we work out conflict well as a family? Give some ideas.
And let's be compassionate. Your first C. If you are on the edge of overwhelm, again, think of that 0 to 10 scale. Frustration is on the same physiological scale as stress. If you are already at 7, it only takes a 1 level trigger to push you straight into overwhelm. So normally, there are things that normally wouldn't drive you crazy. Right now, I mean, they just feel like the last straw. Like, why would you stack the dishwasher that way 10 months into lockdown? Are you trying to kill me? It's just, seriously. And I think everybody's tolerance is way down here, and we see it everywhere, don't we? It's not just with our kids. You see it on social media, in the street. Everybody is crabby and prickly. So I think the most important skill for all of us right now, and including our kids, is 2 things. It's conversation, another C for you. It's chatting. Our job with our kids is to model what emotions are, to put names to those difficult feelings, to help them understand what happens. When my son loses it and shouts at me, it is my job as a parent to say, you need to not do that. But when he comes back 10 minutes later crying because he knows he's been nasty to me, my job is to sit down and say, mate, don't worry about it. This is what happened then. You got frustrated and you got pushed into this zone and you did something that you wouldn't normally want to do. Let's talk about what could you do if you can feel that moment where and we talk about the anger volcano in our house, when you can feel it bubbling up and you're about to blow your top. What do you do? And so conversation, talking, modeling, helping them to understand. And the great thing about this is you will provide some examples of that. So I have today had to sit down with my son and say, right, when mummy shouted, that was actually wrong. And here's what's happened. And here's what I should have done. I should have walked away from that, calmed down, and then come back and had the conversation. So we can be honest. And so we can have those conversations with them. We can help them manage it. The other thing, honestly, Will, is time out. Because we're all in this space, it is recognizing, I'll say to my kids, when do you need to bail? When do you need to get out of the situation and just calm down because you're about to lose it? And whether you are 5, 8, 12, 14, or 44, that is so important. And I've certainly had moments where I've had to say, listen, can we just grab a moment? Like, Mummy's just come off a really tricky call. I can't have this conversation right now. And I think helping, everybody has the right to do that. So that's hard for me as a parent. When my son says, Mummy, can you come back in 5 minutes? I can't have this conversation now. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But it's a good skill to teach them, and it does help us avoid yelling quite so continuously at each other.
The World Health Organization's got a really good model that I like to try and use this in, which is that the first thing is that you mentioned the anger volcano, and I think the first one is redirect. When you can feel it brewing, try and redirect attention into a different activity or a distraction of some kind. Lots of small niggles can be overcome by just attention redirection. And it might be if the child's getting frustrated over a piece of work, or there's an argument over an activity in the house like the dishwasher, or arguments about who's going to the loo at what time. Try and redirect, and that will de-escalate the pressure. And quite a lot of arguments can be avoided by just simple redirection. If redirection doesn't work and you find it brewing even more, the volcano is going to erupt, go for the pause button, which you mentioned. Press the pause button. The psychologist mentioned sort of a Peter acrostic, which is pause, become aware of yourself heating up, empathize. That means try and empathize with how your children are feeling in that particular moment. Think about your response options. That's the T. Think about how you could respond. Exhale. That's like relax your body to try and release the kind of tension that you feel physically brewing. And then finally respond. So the pause Peter model works really well. Go through it again. So pause is pause, P for Peter, pause, empathize, think, exhale, respond. And so you go for redirection, then the pause button, the Peter acrostic, and then moving into consequences. And I think I would say as a parent and as an ex-teacher that consequences are really important, but consequences aren't for parents to get rid of their anger. Consequences aren't a chance to punish your children so you feel better. Like, I'm really glad I got rid of all my anger on my child by giving those really harsh consequences. Consequences are not for parents, consequences are for children. And consequences should focus on helping a child to become aware of their behavior and then to amend their behavior. So two things, it's awareness and amend, that's AA, which basically changes the batteries and helps things to work better. So you look for AA's, is awareness and amend.
I love
every
the
time you come into a
amend,
situation.
Yeah, that's so good, isn't it? And like one thing I always try to do is if I've given a consequence, there's always a chance to redeem.
Right.
So he can always win back. So let's say that I take away an hour of gaming time. My son has little cards. Each one corresponds to an hour of time he's allowed on his gaming. And so that we will use those. He'll lose a card if he's bad. Now, he never wins back the whole card, but if he's really good or he does something nice or he really, whatever, he can win back like half an hour of that time. And I think that's important.
Yeah, a really great win, little wins. And I think that's my sort of concluding point on this. It is just the issue of rewarding good behavior more than punishing bad behavior. So, if you can become aware and you can amend, we should be really celebrating the amend. So if a child becomes aware of their behavior and actually says, oh, mummy, or daddy, I'm doing this. I realized what I was doing. I want to do it slightly differently next time. Really jump on the rewards at that point, because the child is showing an awareness which is new and a desire to change, which is hard. And we should be really supporting that behavior. So I like to think about parenting like a tropical storm. It should brew slowly, rain heavily, and then it's sunny. But parenting shouldn't be like Scotch mist. It takes a week to grow up. You get lost in it forever. You stub your toe on rocks continually, and you never really know where it disappears, but you're sure that people might have forgotten 3 or 4 weeks later. So try and avoid Scotch mist. Always go for the tropical storm. Brew slowly, rain heavily, and then it's sunny. And children respond really well if they know that you haven't got the hump with them. So again, parenting with moods is not helpful. Try really hard. If you're in a mood, try not to let your children think that that mood is about them. Again, collaboration says, kids, I'm in a bit of a mood today. It's really nothing to do with you. So if I seem a bit moody, it's just don't take it personally. That's a fallback strategy. But ideally, we're not parenting with moods. We're just keeping it very clean and clear. This is how it's happening today. If I'm angry, but I'm angry with clear explanation. And then the consequences, but the consequences are clear, defined, and positive as far as is possible. And I mean, I'm nervous, Kate, about charts. I mean, I think your idea about the tokens is a great idea.
Yeah.
We had friends in a previous church who had a favourite child board. Oh, they look good. They had a sort of child of the day board, and then you were ranked in order of achievement, which I thought was absolutely horrific. I would recommend against that kind of thing. Charts aren't wonderful. Try and pivot deftly if you can. Start every day with new accounts. Empty the marble jar daily and start with new rewards. Charts and schemes are okay, but actually they can lose their interest to a child. And actually a long drawn out attempt to get 75 gold stars to get 1 chocolate bar is never going to motivate a child to do well. 5 marbles for your day will make a big difference. If you can win 5 in a day and you get a treat or you get a prize or you get a privilege, 5 marbles in a day, start every day with 5 marbles, and it will work quickly, it will work well, and they'll stay attentive to the rewards that are available. So try and keep it cycling well, try and keep it cycling quickly.
It's so much, isn't it, Will, about just like you say, knowing your child. And like so much of what you've just said then, which is all brilliant, is a lot of it's like the difference between a child brain and the adult brain. So children find abstract concepts really hard because their brains don't have the adult ability that ours do to understand. So even when you say like, I need you to have finished that in 15 minutes. They have no idea what 15 minutes is until they're really quite old. So trying to make abstract things concrete, that's why charts work, because you take an abstract thing like being good and you turn it into, if you've done this by this time, you'll get a marble in the jar. And that's much easier. And that's to do with the way a child's brain works. You were talking about emotions. I find this really helpful in my parenting space. Young children and right up into mid-adolescence, really, they don't have the adult ability to spot the early cues of emotion that we do, the sort of the little things you do that leak that you are feeling a certain way. So, for example, they are driving you crazy and you're about to lose it. Your kid may not know that until the moment you do lose it. So one thing I try to do is give my kids verbal warnings, like, this is actually becoming quite annoying now. Mummy is really cross. I am going to shout at you if this doesn't continue, if this doesn't change, because otherwise they have no idea that it's coming. And so some of those things are good to know. And the other thing is just knowing your child, isn't it? Like my daughter was such a perfectionist, such a high achiever. She would have done anything for 75 gold stars. My son, are you kidding me? He's like, no, are you going to give me a $5? Or can I have a computer game? He's very, very different. Parenting my 2 kids has been so different. So you have to know your child. And again, that's the comparison thing, isn't it? When the parent you're talking to's got the kid who'll do anything for 75 gold stars and you're like, yeah, that doesn't work with mine. That's okay. Just know your child and try and think what's going to work in your space with your child in your moment.
I think that's really helpful. And that's the fourth corner of our parenting in lockdown, which is confidence. It's actually the confidence to know your child and to act in line with what your child is doing, how they're operating, how they're understanding. If we can work with confidence, I think that's really key. And that's where the expectation thing doubles us down, because it makes us feel like actually other people are doing better than we are. If you're a parent on this call, on the YouTube or on the Zoom, you are the best caregiver for your child. You are absolutely the right person to be supporting your child through lockdown 3. So don't think the teachers can do it better than you. They might be better teachers than you, but they're not better parents than you are. Your children need you to be their parent. And so we want to encourage you, however you're working right now, however you're struggling right now, to be confident in your own parenting for your own children. As Kate said, knowing your child and what makes them tick will make you the best influence over their lives right now. So try and step into the confidence of being a parent and being really a caregiver to your child, knowing that you're the best thing since sliced bread as far as they're concerned, even though they might tell you that they hate you at different points during the day. Even if they are unpleasant towards you, know that actually you are absolutely the person who should be confident in that space. And I think alongside that, have the confidence to speak positively about your own family. So one of the activities we do every day, and my youngest son, who's 4 now, drives this activity. It's let's review our day, Daddy. And this is about highlights. Now, if I gave him free rein, he would literally talk for 40 minutes. He obviously takes after me about all the great things that are going on in life. But we all take the opportunity to share our highlights of the day. And as parents, we work really hard to affirm our children confidently about those things that are good. So if you can spend time at tea time or at bath time or in the early evening with slightly older children, just saying, are there any highlights today? And then affirm them confidently. They're looking for your affirmation. And they are scared. When we're afraid, it's a struggle. We're looking for affirmation. Affirmation can really help when it's given confidently. So recognize your significance to your child and affirm them with confidence. And that will make a massive difference to the end of their day. Kate, a couple of words from you on confident parenting.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I always really like the good enough parenting model, which just reminds you that you don't have to be perfect. And I think it's hard because, we love our kids so much. And one of the things that's emotionally tough about this season is it's making us realize things that we don't want to be true. Like, we want to be able to protect our kids from anything bad. We want to be able to control their world, keep them safe, stop anything nasty from happening. And in this awful season, there's all kinds of stuff that we cannot control. And we're seeing it having an impact on them. And that's really tough. And so I think recognizing that we don't have to be perfect. It's okay to get stuff wrong. A lot of people are saying to me, like, is this going to destroy my kids? Are they going to suffer with mental health stuff because of lockdown? Some kids are having it tougher than others, obviously, but my instinct is, like you say, Will, our role is to create a reasonably safe space which they can explore and endure and journey through life. And this is part of their life journey. And it will have an influence on them. When you see those cliffs, like, is it the Jurassic Coast? We have those cliffs and you can see the lines in the cliff where there were like big weather events.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm not a geologist, can't you? I know I've seen it. And I think with our kids, it will be like this. I think we'll look back and we'll see the influence of this season. But kids are so adaptable, so flexible, and actually more cushioned than you think by all the amazing things that all of you guys, I'm sure, are doing. That for most kids, they will adapt and move on. And this will probably have a much smaller impact on them than it will on us as adults, because kids are more easily adaptable and flexible. So just know that so much of our culture now is achievement focused, isn't it? And we see it in the media every time there's this new lockdown, you see it again. It's all like, oh, I'm going to do the best lockdown that you've ever seen, and I'm going to go viral, and I'm going to write a sonnet and a book. And you just think, mate, if I can tread water through this, keep my head above water, keep my family afloat, and wait for the tide to turn, that is a massive win. So if you got through today and you got some homeschooling done and everybody ended up reasonably okay, that you journeyed through another day, well done, you won a lockdown today. It doesn't matter if you didn't achieve any of those amazing things. So let yourself there's the compassion thing again, isn't it? Let yourself just achieve ordinary, normal, not brilliant all the time, and recognize that that's okay. And just know it isn't always you. Sometimes your kids are struggling and it's not your fault. It's just something we have to help them journey with. I guess the last thing I would say, Will, is you know, and again, the psychologist in me, I've seen this in my own parenting. It's surprising how much of our own stuff we hit when we have our own children. You know, you thought you'd processed everything, particularly if you had a difficult childhood or if you've been through trauma or stuff like that in your past, and you think you've dealt with it all. Then you have your own kids, and suddenly, gosh, it's surprising how some of those anxieties, some of those things can bubble up when you see things. You realize things about your own childhood through the way that you're parenting your kids. So what I would say is, if you know that some of that is happening, don't panic. It's really normal. But it will help you to find some space where you can process some of that stuff, a good therapeutic space, or, you know, a good and wise friend who will hold that well and maybe chat and pray things through with you, or, you know, just create some safe space for you. And I think, well, that happens to most of us. I would definitely say it's happened for me. There have been things that I've realized through parenting my own kids. They're actually my stuff, and my dealing with and processing that has helped me parent better. So don't be alarmed if that's something that you've experienced. And, you know, lockdown is bringing out some tricky stuff for some people, I think.
So helpful, Kate. I was going to say that in closing to all the parents on the calls, that actually your needs are as significant as your children's needs, if not more significant. So it's the whole airline thing. You know, if the airline loses, you know, air pressure and the masks fall down, put your mask on first. Otherwise, you know, you might want to put on your children's masks, but if you're not breathing correctly, you might pass out before you've had a chance to help them. And yes, you are important to your children, very, very important, but actually your own health and well-being is also very important to your children. So actually taking breaks during the day is really, really important for you too. Obviously, set your children tasks, but try and make sure that you also are active in self-care. And I would say, you know, there will be points of the day you just want to lock yourself in the bathroom. That's not failure. That's actually sensible. You know, actually taking a long toilet break and just hiding away in there for 10 minutes, that's totally fine. The key thing is that you need time to yourself. You need a break. So take breaks and make sure you look after yourself. And as far as you can, particularly if you've got children of primary age and below, after 8 is your time. Try not to make it work time where you're trying to catch up with all of the tasks of the day that you didn't get done, but actually take some time for yourself. Do some exercise, watch a film, have a nice cup of tea, put your feet up, and actually take time every evening to rest and relax, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And you've got to take care of yourself as you're moving through these different seasons. Collaboration also might mean talking to your boss if you're working and saying, look, understand, I've got 3 kids at home, I'm parenting alone, you know, I'm really struggling with the situation. I've got some childcare, but it's not enough. I'm trying to do all of this difficult stuff. I can't get an Ocado delivery for 3 months. You know, help me out here. But collaborate by being honest and asking for help if you need it. And your local church, if it's St. Dionis or another church on this call, you know, church leaders like me and Tim, we really want to help you. If you're struggling, you know, I know church leaders like Kate, you know, in their communities, they are wanting to help, wanting to support. So ask for help if you need help. If things are going southbound, then don't wait and don't try and make it better yourself. Ask someone to give you some backup and take some of the pressure off. So asking for help isn't a sign of failure. Asking for help is a sign of success. It's just success that's emerging. So just allow emergent success to be yours by asking for help when you need it. Cut yourself a break. Give yourself a pat on the back because you're all doing super, super amazing. Now, Kate, we're going to, it's been so amazing having you on. We're so thankful. You're such a legend. And we're going to do some more of these. Kate's been our guest today. I'm hoping to get Jo, who's absolutely amazing, and works for Kids Matter on this. We're going to get her on. We're going to chat about all the stuff she's been doing and how that all impacts kids. We're hopefully going to get Jam Jones on here as a primary school teacher. At the moment, she's going to share some tips. I've got a few other friends coming up. We're going to do a few of these sessions during lockdown, and we hope that they're a bit of an encouragement to you, at least to give you a pat on the back and say, hey, you're doing a great job. So let's help one another, let's back one another up, let's pray for one another, and let's just recognize that actually, we're doing this thing. We're doing compassion, collaboration, compromise with confidence, and we just believe that, together we can make a difference in our kids' lives. And so thank you all so much for being with us tonight. If you're on the YouTube, we would love you to hit subscribe, because we're trying to get across that golden 100 number that can help us do a few more fancy things on that screen. It's been great. See you in 2 weeks' time, same time, 8:30. We'll stick everything on the chat and on the WhatsApp and whatever, and we'll see you then. Thanks so much, Kate. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Fun evening with you guys.
Really brilliant fun. Thanks so much. God bless everyone.